on tankers in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So it's May 8th, 2026, and I'm not even going to say it anymore. I just want you to know that if you follow me on Twitter or X, you know by now my favorite GIF, I'm going to say what GIF, is this right here. I mean, it's every time I read something, it's like, you have got to be kidding me. I've got to channel this in some way, because if I was doing what they're doing in that image, I'd be drunk all the time based on this. We're going to talk about three stories for you today. One, we're going to talk about the American destroyers that just came out from the Strait of Hormuz. Second, we're going to talk about Iranian attacks on vessels, including the seizure of a Chinese tanker that supposedly loaded in Iran but was seized by the Iranians. I mean, you understand why I keep posting this, right? You got it? Because this is what I mean. And then finally, the U.S. has attacked a pair of Iranian tankers on top of the one they strafed the other day. We're going to talk about all three of these stories and break them down for you. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. So first story, we're going to talk about the American destroyers that broke out of the Persian Gulf and came into the Gulf of Oman. And I think one of the things I keep hearing is, number one, people don't believe this, and whatever. You know, you're not going to prove anything to some people unless they are physically on the deck of the destroyer, and even then they're going to question it. But I understand the doubt everybody has regarding statements from both the Iranians and the U.S. government. Got it. 100% understand that. But let's go over what we know to be a fact. Fact number one, on May 4th, two destroyers from the United States Navy, USS Truxtun and USS Mason, deployed into the Persian Gulf. They were set up as the western end of a defense perimeter that was put in place with a couple of other destroyers outside the Persian Gulf so that these two ships, the motor vessel Alliance Fairfax and the CS Anthem, could sortie across the Strait of Hormuz and out. These are two of the 5 American ships that came out. This satellite image was posted by our good buddy Tom Bike over on X. I am 100% positive, no doubt, bet my life on it, those ships are out, because I know. And it's not just because of Tom's photo there. I know. I also know what went in to get those ships out, and the amount of resources that were put into this was massive. An entire squadron of F-35s, AH-64 Apache gunships flying overhead. They scared away the Omani Navy. When the Omani Navy popped out, they scared them away because they were going to ensure that these two ships get out. And most importantly, an umbrella at both ends with 2 American destroyers inside the strait and several outside the strait. I don't have the exact number on how many were outside the strait, but there were at least 2, if not more, outside the strait. So the Americans broke out, and then what happened was the Project Freedom kind of came apart. And we're going to talk about this in the second story, which is the attacks on ships. This left the USS Truxtun and the USS Mason inside the Persian Gulf. Now, these are Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. These ships have several limitations. First off, weaponry. They run anywhere from 90 to 96 vertical launch cells. And those vertical launch cells are divided between several different types of weapons. There are Tomahawk cruise missiles, which are land attack missiles. There are standard missiles, and there's an array of different standard missiles. And then there's the Evolved Sea Sparrow system, the ESSM, which are actually 4 missiles in a single cell, what's called a quad pack. And so these destroyers, the 2 of them, pack a large array of weaponry. However, they were in the Persian Gulf for at least 3 days, and there's no telling how much weaponry they expended during that period of time. The other issue there is fuel. I mean, without a underway replenishment vessel nearby, they're going to burn through their fuel, and destroyers at high speed are only good for a few days before they got to come out. Now, there's no telling how fast these ships were steaming, what kind of situation they were in fuel. They can go into port, but that puts them in a position of being stationary. They could bring barges out and kind of, one protects the other. But they decided, because Project Freedom was curtailed, and we talked about that in our last video, they decided to pull both destroyers out. And that was the story that we got today from U.S. Central Command. U.S. forces intercepted unprovoked Iranian attacks and responded with self-defense strikes as U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers transited the Strait of Hormuz on May 7th. Iranian forces launched multiple missile drones and small boats at USS Truxtun, USS Mason, but also USS Rafael Peralta, and I'm going to talk about Peralta in a second, transmitted the international sea passage. No U.S. assets were struck. So what got me in that note was there's a third destroyer. It makes me think the third destroyer came in, picked up the two, and came out with them. If the first two destroyers had expanded weapons, then you wanted to make sure you had another destroyer there to provide cover. Plus, there were probably more destroyers out in the Gulf of Oman. So this operation was to extract the two destroyers. And what we saw was U.S. land attack against bases onshore in Iran. These would have been Tomahawk launches, potentially from inside the strait, by the Truxtun and the Mason, and from outside the strait, along with air attacks. So the idea that there's a ceasefire is long gone. And Congress, you need to have a war powers discussion because we've never had a ceasefire. This conflict's been going on. So the argument that this ship got chased out of there is bogus, in my opinion. They got out of there because the ships were running low on weaponry and fuel, probably, and that is why they needed to come out. Plus, if you're not going to be doing the Project Freedom, where you're running ships in and out, there's no reason to maintain the destroyers in the Gulf. They were in there for 2 to 3 days, and that's about the limit you have until you need them out. And more than likely, if they were going to maintain that operation, they would have been doing that. They would have been rotating destroyers in at a time. If you're using your weaponry, if you're expending VLS cells, if you're expending 5-inch ordnance, if you're expending CRAM and CWIS, and all the other ordnance on board, you're going to have to replenish that. Now, everything can be replenished at sea except for the VLS cells. If you have to replenish VLS, you got to go all the way down to Diego Garcia. N.T. Anderson caught this image of Diego Garcia, where we see several ships in Diego Garcia, including an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, is the motor vessel Ocean Trader. This is a video I did a while ago talking about the Ocean Trader, which is a stealth ship. Not stealth because you can't see it on radar, but because it runs dark. It is a platform for the Special Operations Command. It's interesting, I did this thumbnail a long time ago with Elmer Fudd on there, and we've been talking about duck season, rabbit season the whole time, and now here's Ocean Trader. Ocean Trader will operate very much like the expeditionary support bases, the Miguel Keith and the John Canley in the area, providing a platform by which they can go seize vessels, and we're going to talk about that in our third story. All right, second story is the attacks being initiated by Iran as a result of the Alliance Fairfax and CS Anthem coming out and the two destroyers going in. So Iran has responded with attacks against shipping coming through the Strait of Hormuz. If you are not going through their approved process through the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, that's right, the PGSA, it's a new level above the PGA, except this one shoots at you if you don't have permission to be on the fairway. The PGSA has been set up to regulate ships coming through, and what we've seen is attacks against ships that have done that. Other week, we had 2 Mediterranean shipping company vessels that were boarded and seized by the Iranians. Well, this is the latest JITMIC, Joint Maritime Information Center report, and here they list vessel attacks. I'm going to take JITMIC to task one more time. I did this recently with proofreading this. The new thing JITMIC is doing is not naming vessels. I don't know why, because we know what the names of the vessels are. So you're not doing anything by not showing the names. But in particular, I want to highlight a couple here. So the tanker, the second one down here, this is the Baraka. This is a vessel that was attacked by at least 2 drones in the engine room and cargo room. All the crew are reported safe. There was no damage. This is a Liberian flag vessel, but owned by Pakistan. Then you have on May 4th, the HMM Namu. This is a ship that we believe may have been hit by an errant mine, a mine that actually broke loose because the damage to the ship was severe. A fire in the engine room. They're being investigated. All the crew was reported safe. Then you start having even more protracted attacks. So the attack here on May 4th against the tanker with a fire reported on deck as a result of the attack. This is 40 nautical miles off the coast of the UAE. This ship is the JV Innovation. mention, this is a Chinese-owned vessel. So the Chinese had a ship attacked by the Iranians. And then the last one here, the container vessel here, or the cargo vessel, this is the CMA-CGM San Antonio. The ship was subject to, believe, a missile attack. 4 of the crew have been injured, and 1 crew member is severely injured. Later, 8 crew members were flown to the hospital. So these were all a result of actions taken by the U.S. to open up the strait, and these are retaliations by the Iranians. And some of these ships are being hit because they either didn't get the permission from the PGSA. Again, I friggin' can't believe we're talking about the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, which has no authority whatsoever. Can I be clear about that? None. Iran has no authority over the Strait of Hormuz. It's international waters. It's, yes, half of its territorial waters of Iran, half its territorial waters of Oman, but under UNCLOS, Article 37, you have to allow nations that are inside the strait to get out, and you have to allow free passage through it. And I know Iran has not recognized UNCLOS, by which case then you revert back to 3-mile limits. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Either you have 3 miles or you let ships go in and out. You can't have it both ways. But what we've been seeing is these escalating confrontations in the Gulf. Tom Bike, again, had some great imagery showing a very large crude carrier coming in, and what you see is a swarm of small, fast attack boats around it. The other disturbing issue we see here is 2 fires that are burning right now on the Strait of Hormuz. We just don't know what it is. Some people are saying these are the American destroyers on fire. It's more than likely one of the ships we identified that was under attack. Now, Iran has confirmed these attacks. This is from Louis Jackson and Sam Lee from Reuters. The Chinese foreign minister on Friday confirmed that an oil products tanker carrying Chinese crew was attacked in the Strait of Hormuz and expressed deep concern about the vessel affecting the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. They go on to say that there are Chinese nationals aboard the ship, but there are no crew casualties. According to Chinese media, the ship was marked as Chinese owner and crew on AIS. The attack happened before a meeting between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Iranian counterpart Abbas Arki in Beijing on Wednesday when they discussed reopening the strait. China has remained a major buyer of Iranian oil since the outbreak of the war, with its imports from Iran largely unaffected in March. Now, the other story we have is this one here. Iran detains Ocean Koi, tanker apparently hauling Iranian oil. So I don't even know how to put this into context right here. But this comes from Iranian state television. During a special operations, naval commandos of the Islamic Republic of Iran's army detained the violating oil tanker Ocean Koi. The state television went on to say that the vessel was attempting to disrupt oil exports and the interests of the Iranian nation. This video was posted by the Iranian state news agency. Now, the ship was carrying Iranian oil, but it was exploiting regional conditions. I am not sure what that means. If you look at the track of this tanker, it actually shows that it came out of Iraq, not Iran, but that is done lots of times to spoof this. Now, the ship manager is Ocean Kudo Shipping in Shanghai, and Iran has enforced a near closure of the strait, but they have allowed tankers, particularly Iraqi tankers, to go out. I mean, one of the things that they've been doing is trying to set up methods where several nations can go out. I have no idea why they first targeted JV Innovation, and now they've seized this tanker off the coast. It goes, I don't know. I don't know what they're trying to play here, but Ocean Koi seemed to have permission to head out, and now she has been seized. She goes into holding off Bandar Abbas with the 2 Mediterranean Shipping Company vessels. All right. That brings us to our last element, which is the strikes by the United States against 2 more Iranian tankers. So back on May 6th, we had a note from CENTCOM talking about the fact that they have disabled the ship, the motor tanker Hasna. This is the ship at anchor off the coast of Oman. She popped back up on AIS. She was dark after leaving the coast of Sri Lanka. She pops back up. She's showing to be not under command. According to CENTCOM, their forces observed Hansa as it transited international waters en route to an Iranian port on the Gulf of Oman. That's got to be Chabar. American forces issued multiple warnings and informed the Iranian flag vessel it was in violation of the blockade. After the crew failed to comply with repeated warnings, U.S. forces disabled the tanker's rudder by firing several rounds from the 20mm cannon gun of a U.S. Navy F-18 Super Hornet launched from the Abraham Lincoln. So they are using aircraft to do this. Now, I posted something on Twitter about this. I got lots of comments on it. I'm really curious. If you post a question on Twitter, why do you have to just attack somebody who posted a question? I actually sincerely asked a question. It's like, why do you think they used an aircraft to do this? When previously we saw USS Spruance, a Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, use its gun to disable the Tuska. And Tuska, by the way, has been turned back over to the Pakistanis. Very interesting story about the U.S. crew on board trying to get permission to sail that ship into Pakistani waters. It seems like the Pakistanis didn't know Tuska was coming, but that's a whole different story. In this case, the U.S. used an F-18. I think this has a lot to do with something else here. By my count, there may be at most a dozen Arleigh Burke-class destroyers in and around this region. You've got 2 aircraft carriers. You've got to have at least 2 to 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers with each of those aircraft carriers. So 12 destroyers, that gets you down to 8. 2 of them were in the Persian Gulf, gets you down to 6. At least 2 to 3 of them were out in the Gulf of Oman to cover them coming out. So that gets you down now to, 10 or 11? You don't have enough to cover the blockade out here at the time. Now, you do have the 2 expeditionary support bases out there, the Canley and the Miguel Keith, but you're short, basically, vessels. So that if you are the Iranians and you have a batch of ships all at the same time heading up from off the territorial waters here of Sri Lanka and India and start bolting for the Gulf of Oman, you've got to do something to stop them. And that's where F-18s came in. It seems as if the U.S. decided to use the F-18s to target the ships. Now, we don't have video from the attack on Hasna. However, we do for the next 2 ships. So CENTCOM reports they disabled the motor tanker Sea Star 3 and the Sveta on May 8th prior to both vessels entering an Iranian port in the Gulf of Oman. A U.S. Navy F-18 Super Hornet from the George H.W. Bush disabled both tankers after firing precision-guided munitions into their smokestacks, preventing the non-compliant ships from entering Iran. According to Admiral Brad Cooper, U.S. forces in the Middle East remain committed to the full enforcement of the blockade of vessels leaving or entering Iran. Our highly trained men and women in uniform are doing incredible work. Okay, first, I want to take a moment and break down this video for you because there's a couple of things that really stand out for me. Now, I threw this video up onto a big screen at home because I wanted to take a look at it. So first off, this is Sea Star 3. You can see she's empty. She is up out of the water. You can see her rudder right here projecting under the stern so that when we were talking about the F-18 attacking Hasna, she could potentially actually hit that stern, or she can hit here the steering compartment on the stern. That's not what's done here. According to this, they're firing precision-guided munitions into the smokestack. So a couple of things that I notice here. I am not sure if this ship is underway. I don't see really, there's a bit of water moving past the rudder here, but we don't see a lot of way on here. And again, it's grainy images you're seeing right here. You can see a little bit of waves, but this ship could be at anchor or it could be just adrift. It's really difficult to tell. If she is underway, you would typically have wash coming by this. Now, Sea Star 3 is a 14-year-old Chinese-built tanker operated by the National Iranian Tanker Company, NITC. You'll notice the imagery here that the ship has kind of a house structure. This is the superstructure, so you got the bridge up here, bridge wing here, and then all the accommodations for the crew are here along with the mess deck and all other facilities. Down below here would be your engine room down here with the shaft coming out over here. So engine room is back down here. You have the trunk of the stack coming up here. So this is where your intake and exhaust all come up here. Can't help but notice it doesn't look like these ships are fitted with scrubbers. So they're either burning very low sulfur fuel oil or these ships are in violation of IMO emissions. But you have a kind of a separate structure. There's actually a gap here between the house structure and the machinery structure back aft. Plus, you would probably have some generators up here, up outside above the waterline in case of an emergency. What you see here, and I'm going to come back here for a second, is a quick little flash right there where the round goes in, it doesn't look like at the moment that there's actually a explosion. It looks like you have the round go in, and then you have a poof of smoke come out. Now later on, you get fire on board the ship, and that is what we see burning aft there. So a very precision guided. Not sure if that was an inert round or a low order round. Not exactly sure what they hit it with, but obviously it was enough to cause that subsequent fire on board the vessel. Next vessel here is Feda. This is a 27-year-old Korean-built tanker, also operated by NITC. And you'll notice something a little bit different here. So the layout is very similar. You've got the house structure here, and then you have the machinery and engine compartment spaces back aft here with your generators and machinery. Very similar layout. Ship is high up out of the water. Rudder showing there. And again, not a lot of indication that the ship is moving. There's no wake being thrown from the vessel, no prop. So real big question about, is this ship hove to? Is it anchored? I just don't know, because we never see the bow on this. Notice where this explosion takes place. This is actually going to hit somewhere between the house structure here, the superstructure, and the after structure. You can see the flash of the explosion right there in that gap, and then the large explosion that takes place. This is a much higher order detonation than what we saw on Sea Star 3. And the fire begins to burn, and as you let that play there, you'll see a much larger conflagration takes place. We see smoke, we see the uptakes are burning, we see smoke coming through there, and that will probably encumber the entire superstructure of the ship. So different levels of strikes. Really curious about a couple of issues here as we wrap up this video. So 3 events: the destroyers coming out. No videos, imagery of that at all. CENTCOM just put out something, and it's not of the destroyers coming out. I'm never going to bother showing it to you because it's not worth the time to waste your time with that. So the destroyers pull out. It's not the destroyers running. It's not that the Iranians have beat them off. It's after 3-4 days, you can't keep those destroyers in the Persian Gulf because of supply issues. They got to come out. If you were going to maintain Project Freedom and be escorting ships, you would probably be rotating destroyers in and out, but you can't do that for long because of the finite number of destroyers you have. Second, the Iranian attacks. It looks like the Iranians are getting a little bit more desperate in their attacks. Why grab a Chinese-owned tanker? Why target a Chinese tanker? The Houthi had this issue during the Red Sea where they were targeting ships and they didn't quite match up with what they were saying. So I wonder if this is it, or is Iran playing a game because their foreign ministers in Beijing, and more importantly, President Trump is preparing to head to go meet with Chairman Xi and discuss issues. Maybe this is an effort to either drag China into it or get China to mediate some sort of conclusion to this. And then CENTCOM, because I think CENTCOM is stretched so thin in terms of ships and resources, they've got to use aircraft. Now, there's no reason not to use aircraft. I'm fine with that. You can go ahead and use aircraft for that. But again, you're going to knock these ships out of service, which is good. A lot of people are talking about these tankers have to get up to Iran to load oil to keep Iran afloat so that they don't have to shut down wells. More and more I see about this, I don't think this is a major concern for Iran as much as it's a major concern for countries like Kuwait and Bahrain, which have to get oil out, and they're getting none out right now. I do think, however, this shows that the United States is using more forceful measures at this time to force this. Iran has a set number of tankers. They've got a fleet of roughly around 60 tankers, and we've seen so far 3 of them taken out by these attacks. Will it continue? Potentially. You've got 2 American aircraft carriers in there. Their aircraft can definitely range across this entire region. You don't need to put picket destroyers out there and do boardings. Plus, you also minimize danger to the American crews on board. Going on board these ships, you have the potential for the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, to potentially booby trap, have weapons on board. Definitely hitting them is a question. However, I do question the issue here about these ships being underway or not. because I'm just not seeing that in that video. I'd like to see a little bit more detail and explanation on it. I'd like to see a bigger video of it where we see the bow. Are these ships actually underway? What's happening now? I hope you got something out of today's episode. If you need to get caught up again, hey, check our past episodes on it. We talked about the 2 ships coming out in the Strait, how they went about doing that, working on a video with more detail on that, because I'm learning more and more about it. There was a Wall Street Journal story that just came out about that. Little light on detail, I will say. I think they got a couple of quotes there, which I think is good, but not really the detail, granular level stuff I like to talk about with you, so you can check out that video. Also, we'll be having our weekly recap, week 10 of the Gulf of Hormuz, Arabian Sea blockade. We'll have you the week 10 update. Tomorrow, I'll be dropping a video on the great battleship debate. Zach Cooper from the American Enterprise Institute and John Conrad over at G-Captain for an hour went at it discussing whether or not the U.S. should or should not be building battleships. I mediated, hence you see me in my battleship shirt from the Pearl Harbor. So it's pro-battleship, but at the same time anti-battleship, because the battleships did not fare well at Pearl Harbor. But anyway, you'll catch that video tomorrow. If you can, support the page. How do you do that? Well, number one, you can subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Hey, do me a favor, always check that you're still subscribed. YouTube likes to bolt people off for some reason. I don't know why. We're on the precipice of 700,000 subscribers, trying to get numbers up there. I always like those big hurdles. I don't know why. It makes me feel good when we hit those things, kind of like watching your odometer turn on your car. Also, if you can, support the page. How do you do that? Well, spread it across social media. Follow me on social media. I'm on all the platforms. I'm on X. I'm on Blue Sky, Facebook, LinkedIn. Check them out and everything. We have these videos up on Patreon, but also on Spotify too. So if you want to go over to Spotify and listen to them, you can do that. And if you can, support the page directly by hitting the super thanks button down below or heading on over to Patreon and becoming a monthly, yearly subscriber. Until the next episode, this is Sal, signing off.